Mike Ceballos, welcome to the Star-Tribune.
Thanks for having me back.
Well, give you a second to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and your platform and your background.
Sure. Again, I'm Mike Ceballos. I've worked 30 years for the same large complex corporation. The last 14, I was state president here in Wyoming of Quest Communications. Have had great opportunity to work with education over the last 18 years in really policy positions, and it started with Governor Geringer and a project we were working on to connect all the schools to broadband, and from that he asked us to get involved, and so I've worked with every governor, every superintendent. We've worked on a multitude of educational policy issues. And to that end, over the last few months, we've decided to go to all 48 school districts. We've hit 41. We still hope to get to the other 7 before we're done, but have had a great opportunity to listen and have had input from parents, from teachers, from administrators and business folks, and all of them like just the skills that I bring of being a businessman, as they've said, not a bureaucrat, really a good administrator to help work through the constant change that really has been plaguing education and not being able to let them focus. And then certainly just the board skills that I've had from the Business Alliance, taxpayers, and economic development to really focus on the state boards. And in all, what they've said is really they believe that I just bring the right sets of skills for this office.
So tell us, what's the first policy decision you'd make upon taking office as superintendent of public instruction?
Well, and I don't know if it's a policy decision, but it's the one that I'm already working on. Again, I talked about going out to visit with these 48 districts, and somewhere in there, I'm the business nerd. So what I really looked at is, who do I serve? Who's my customer? And when you look at that, the work of education is with a student, with a teacher, and that teacher could be a parent, but it's also then with the communities and then the district that serves them. And so I have said that I believe that you have to have local engagement, local involvement. Some, again, would refer to it local control. And where I really believe then is my relationship shouldn't be to get in between then that student and that district, but then to serve the districts. So we've been out talking about how can we address the needs that the legislature just found in their survey of saying we need to have a shared state vision. So for the last probably 2 months, we've been talking with the districts about how would we collectively develop that. Because if we can create that shared state vision, what the opportunity we have is to have both communities through the local districts and for us collectively with the legislature to talk about why education is important and what that group would like to do, so it becomes their role. And if all heads are shaking yes, I think we can create the confidence and the trust to then ask that body to let the experts, the professionals, talk about how to do it. And with that, we would develop a 5-year plan. And again, for the last 2 months, we've been talking about the fact that we could get a 5-year plan would push it outside of an election role, but really to make it a state plan. And that's where we're going to have to focus. So that is not something I'm just going to start doing on November 5th. I've started to do it already, and it's been received warmly.
So give us 3 goals of your term in office, assuming you get elected. What are 3 achievements, 3 policy goals that you want to achieve when you're there?
Yeah. Clearly, what we have to do is to step back and to make sure that, again, we've got roles established. When you looked at what the legislature has talked about, one of the problems we've got is just a whole accountability issue, and then how do you work with that? And out of that comes testing and different measures. So one of them is to work with our school districts to set a clear set of plans. So what I would say again, it's this 5-year plan, and within that plan, and it's very similar to what the university is doing right now. You would have mileposts. And with that, you would look for measurements there. So we could both talk about the things that are working and the things that aren't. Because part of when this dissolves is if people thinking you're sandbagging, you're not telling the whole story. So we've really got to get that system turned back on. And part of the reason to do that is we need to, which is then a second issue, is create greater stability in the educational system. Right now, we've just been through this whole standards process, and when you really talk to educators, they've been working the last 2 to 3 years on establishing then how to do it. And what we heard out of the state board, I think it was last week, is there's a concern, even though the law says every 5 years they need to be reviewed, they're even saying it's too soon to change then that standard and start over again. So it's that ability to create a sense of common direction so that we do have stability with those plans that educators are going to be implementing and our school districts are going to be taking forward. And the thought of it is, because I've even read in this paper, that we change things so much that it's what I've heard them call it as a moving target. And when you do that, you really can't focus on the results that's happened because the new tests now change it, so you can't track where it's going. I think finally, and it's the toughest one to do, but in that study that the Joint Education Committee came out with, and it was on whether to have an appointed or an elected superintendent, was the fact that the number one thing that it stated from those that returned the survey was that we've got to engage our parents. And I think that means you've got to engage your parents, your employers, your community. And that is a long-term goal. And it does flummox everyone. When you talk with educators, they always tell me, Mike, don't you know that I know how important it is to have our parents involved? And when you also talk with the administrators, they say, don't you know how hard we're working to get them there? But we have so much work to do. We've got 10 gallons in a 5-gallon bucket of work. And we get discouraged because this effort to really get communities engaged is going to take a lot. And when we haven't had success in the past, then why would you pursue it again? But you know you can't move our students from good to great if you don't figure out ways to involve your communities, your employers, and your parents more fully. So I think that's the long-term goal we've got to work on.
Tell me about, as a parent, how you characterize your children's experience in public schools, and what have you learned during that time that you've been able to take away as you look forward into a potential term?
Sure. As a parent, one of the opportunities that we've had that's unique is my wife, when we moved to Wyoming, was stay at home. And I had a great job, and the benefits of being able to support my family and my wife being able to focus on our kids. So both my son and my daughter were in the public schools the entire time. We were in Jessup, which everybody in Cheyenne considers one of the blessed schools. We had really good administrators, we had teachers, and my wife was able to be there with them. That combination produced great results. But even my son in the back there, we could have done a little bit more. And so you always wonder, so how do you get there? And you really do get to the point where you recognize that everybody, however, can help add to that. And we didn't always know how to talk about the relevance. And I think there's things that you see afterwards that your kids are interested in that help make connections. So when they see something and they can do hands-on work with it and then see how education applies, I think that's no different from my kids than others, because too often we look at some of what we're trying to teach and it is theoretical. And we, even as parents, ask, well, how will they use that? So part of the process then is to figure out how do we talk along the way about what we're trying to do. Because as I've gotten into education and I'm working on my doctorate, you really start to see the science. And there's got to be a way to translate that. But our experience has been great. My son just graduated from the University of Wyoming in kinesiology. He's moving forward, hopefully, to get a physical therapy, to get into a physical therapy school. And really, as I've joked in the past, what the hope of all parents is that as a result of all this work, you're going to get better Christmas presents and not have to worry about your kid having to live in the basement again. So I think we're all working on what that success factor is, because it is different for different families and different students, but it is that relationship there. And education for me has delivered a wonderful result, and a son and daughter that I'm very proud of, and a lot of it is due to the education they received.
So you talked a little bit about the moving target, that that some people have felt, and it's felt, and we've certainly expressed it ourselves. It feels like every year is almost a baseline year anew. How do you get a usable, durable testing standard that's valuable to both students and educators going forward?
Well, and again, you have to start with the standard. So we have to say, I think, first of all, what is the highest standard that we can possibly push? And then I think we're going to have to do this, which is hard in this state. Because we have so many different circumstances, is to say, and that standard should not be moved because of the circumstance that you have locally. When we look at the articles that you've written on what's happening at the reservation, and visiting all the districts now on the reservation, they really talk about being committed and knowing how important it is, but also struggling. One of the board members there said, we're really trying to figure out how do we get our parents together with this, and they know that's an issue. But you could be willing to say, well, if we push them too hard, maybe they won't stay, but we can't give up on that. We have to stay firm on the standard. What we need to start listening to, though, is to districts. What are the different ways that you can work with a district to help those students get there? And that we have the same thing in the agricultural communities, that folks say, well, it's kind of a different environment here. But when we were in Claremont, a school of 82 students, we went and looked at their FFA program that they had in the back and how they're tying things together. And they have a really good graduation rate. And part of the reason that they do is because they do know everybody. I don't know how you would get in trouble in Claremont because everybody knows everybody. So it's really a good deal. But they figured out a way to tie that program. And there's welding and different things they're doing in back, but they're tying it to math, so that kids that are doing math and having to look at things can do it hands-on, but they also get the theory of the math work together, and it's called blended learning. And so when you see that happening, you know that that can be repeated in other cases. So I think the most important thing for me to do as state superintendent is stay focused on a high standard and then recognize you have to talk with every district and support them on their unique ways to get there. And then let us all hold each other accountable to doing that. We can't continue to let students graduate that are in what we know to be a remedial state. You've got to hang with them. And we have the opportunity with our laws today to take students all the way to the age of 21. And I think that's what we should be about, rather than having kind of this set 4-year graduation rate. And even if our numbers don't look publicly good because of that 4-year, if we can move our graduation rates up from the 70s to the 90s by hanging in there with them for a 5th year, then isn't that the better result? Because oftentimes many of those students won't go back. This is the education that they'll get for their life, and we need to make sure that they know how to learn so that as jobs change in the future, they can change with them.
So, partially a related question here, how would you assess the state of career and technical education in Wyoming and its importance?
One of the things I've heard a lot from our districts about is that they don't think that the current recalibration system really is funding that technical education as much as they could. So that's an issue we need to start talking about. And money isn't the solution, because clearly if it were, we would have proved that we're going to be the best. But we do have to look, is the model not supporting technical? The other issue, though, really is how do you do this idea of blended learning? Because we've heard folks talk about the power of music and the ability to learn math in there, because you know the quarter notes, and that's another bucket list. I'd like to learn an instrument, so I don't know about that. But you've heard the teachers talk about it, and you've heard teachers talk about, again, art and how you can do things with problem solving and perspectives there. But obviously the career technical. So the other big piece we have to support our teachers is to have the time for them to work together, and they call it professional learning communities, so that you can collaborate when you're doing something in one subject. And for instance, tie writing into math, or tie writing into when you're teaching our social studies courses. But equally doing those same things with math, with construction classes, helping them see how angles and geometry works. So I think that's the power. And frankly, it's not only going to benefit the career technical students, but again, as I've talked about it with my son, I think there was some courses that he took knowing that he was college bound, and the relevance was it was a requirement to get into college. And if we can help make the connections with hands-on work and then the theory, I think all of our students are going to do better. And again, as I've quoted just yesterday, one of the things that we found out is when they put students together that had 3 career technical classes, and they call it a concentration. Last year they did a research to say, well, what's happened with kids with concentration? They graduated at a 20% higher graduation rate than the average student in the student body. And that has to say there's connections being made there, and just that intuitive knowledge that we're moving in the right direction. So clearly it's a great model, and I think we can apply it in many different instances, but again, to make sure that we blend our learning so that students see the connection with the theory.
What's your perception of homeschooling and of the parents who choose to practice it? Should it be encouraged or discouraged?
You know, part of our issue in Wyoming, again, I talked about parents. If we've got parents engaged with their students, isn't that really what we're trying to work on? I think that's the piece. And again, with our society and with our state, really do we want to argue, well, we don't know if you're really good at doing that. I mean, that just seems so opposite the direction. We have so many parents we want to engage. Why would I be pushing back on parents that say, I want to do this? Why would I be testing them or talking to them? That's really their fundamental perspective, and we should respect it. Now, what we probably could do better is ask, how can we serve you? And not force ourselves on them, but take the same lessons we're learning. Because frankly, whether they're taught in a home school, in a private way, or in our public schools, they're all our students, and they deserve the department's attention when they want help from the department.
So you've touted your business experience as a strong asset for you, but how can voters be confident that you can, without classroom experience, connect with students and teachers as a superintendent?
If we were hiring for a teacher's job and I was putting a job ad in the Casper Star, then I could see why you'd want to ask, what's the experience for teaching a class? But we're not hiring it. As I've looked back now from my doctorate, this is a job that really is about managing a hugely complex organization. And frankly, there's even a risk if you come with some experience that what you're going to try to do is to say, well, I'm the leader now, so maybe I should know more than some of my experts in here. And that's the last thing you want to do. What you want somebody to do is to have experience in having worked with complex systems and complex organizations. Because when you do that, you'll realize that what you need is that expertise, and your skill that's needed is the ability to lead, to have somebody that's can administer those places. And we've had lots of complaints to the extent now that even you're saying, well, boy, maybe we should be appointing one because we can't elect a good one. And I don't know what your criteria would be, again, if you do that, but I would bet at the top of it would be people that had skills in leadership that's been proven, that's had the ability to work with legislatures, that's had the time administering large, complex groups. I sat in one of my classes next to a person, and I'm working on my EDD. This is a doctorate that they're working on, a PhD. And what she had was a background and was working on curriculum. So that scares me. Wow, curriculum, that's really complex. And then you start thinking, but it wasn't just curriculum, it was math curriculum. And then it wasn't just math curriculum, it's K through 6 math curriculum. That kind of specialization doesn't bode well if what you're saying, I've had to have classroom experience to manage those folks. So I think that's a misnomer. Now, would it be ideal to have had some classroom experience? Sure, that would be great. But teachers are consistently telling me, administrators are telling me, Mike, we don't need a teacher. And they've gone on to say, we've had that. What we need is somebody that has leadership and administrative skills. And I think that's a perfect match. And there should be no concern about me being able to manage that business.
Let's talk about school funding. What's the key to avoiding litigation on requested cost of living increases for school districts? Is it even avoidable?
Well, you know, one of the problems that there's really been a discussion about is that in a block grant and the way that it was delivered, is that the money was put up front. And what they've talked about is when we got that, we wanted then to use it to hire the best possible teachers we could. And to do that, they increased some salaries. The problem is the way that they did that then, without cost of living adjustments, then for them, it's been flat. Now, I've got to tell you, that's not been consistent across all the districts. So I think there is some debate and discussion in the districts about what do you think the best ways are, because some others have said, no, we can manage that. So I'm not sure if it's always the size, it's the approach that you take to doing it. But what I've been asking, in both at a state and a district level, what are the needs? And if the thought is that there should be adjustments for cost increases that we all see every year going up, then maybe there's a possibility that there's just a way to fund it. So then rather than funding on a flat level, you fund it on a stair-step level so that when you do come in, it's something lower, and as you go up, it's higher. I don't know if it's that simple, but there clearly is great concern. I've had district superintendents tell me that they've had to let folks go so that what they could do was keep up and programs go. And I don't think it was hyperbole. I think that they're really concerned about it. But it seems to me that one of the things we've got to do in this recalibration process is really go back and embrace the idea of really listening to each other. And I'm afraid that sometimes, because of things like lawsuits, we've gotten more litigious in our approach. And you kind of come in, as I've been in my business, with attorneys on both sides of the table. And that's usually not been the best thing, because when I've gone in with my attorneys, if we're at that point, I really can't communicate very much. What they're saying is, let us do the work. And I think when you get to that level, it doesn't bode well for really listening and working with each other. So I think that's the key for us to really step back and say, let's assume that this is a legitimate issue. How do we start identifying the problems there, being specific, and then working out solutions? And I think we can. And frankly, what we need to do is we need to start providing you with stories that talk about how we're working together, not how we're working against each other.
So from our polling, you've got a ways to go to catch up with Ms. Balo, with a lot of undecided voters,
Sure.
Voters who haven't heard of either of your names.
Sure.
What can you do in the next couple of weeks to close that gap?
Well, one of the great things that you did in the polling is you helped me get some data points. So we know that I've gone from 6% when I started of name recognition to 60. I think that's a pretty good use of some of the funds we're doing. You also identified that 40% of the folks don't know me in that poll. And what would you think about 40%? If they don't know me and there's a 3-to-1 registration, how do you think they would have said in that poll that they would go? I think maybe there's half of that at least that you would do. And you identified that 29% are undecided. So I could make a great case that we still have half the state that really hasn't decided on me. We've got a great campaign going on. You're going to see radio and TV advertising, and I think really high quality, positive advertisements that you've seen. And I think that's a great opportunity. I think people in the next few weeks are going to start saying, well, I've seen this ad about Mike Ceballos, who is he? And I think the opportunity there is then to connect a lot of folks that are moving quickly towards me because they really got mad at some negative letter writing that my opponent did. And when you look at that, if you say, okay, so I've got a solid 25% and I've got 50% open, now all of a sudden I'm saying, gosh, I've got 50-50 chance there. That sounds a lot better than I started. So is it tough? Absolutely. Am I with the whole way the voting blocks are going, have a challenge? Sure I do. But I'm confident that we've got a great business plan together. And again, I'm just that old business nerd. We put a plan together, we've been working it, we've been looking at how it's producing. And I think we've got some great feelings that we are going in the right direction. Is it going to be a challenge? And am I going to be asking every one of my volunteers and those that support me to get out there? Sure. But it'll be a tough race, but it's not over yet.
Any other questions? Great. Well, Mike, thank you so much. Let's give you a couple of minutes to make a closing statement.
Sure. It would be the same thing that I started. When I've talked to these 48 districts, I've talked to the different elements, and I have talked with parents. And what parents are telling me is they're tired of this process of all argument and not having a focus on their students, because they've got students today. And they're saying, we don't want to wait for you to refine more, to do more. We need to move forward. And they've said, Mike, you're a businessman, not a bureaucrat. We have trust in you that you can focus on our students and help move the process forward. Again, with the educators, there's clearly been an issue that all of the moving targets really make it hard for them to deliver. And they've spent 3 years with very difficult work to integrate 2 new standards on math and language arts with reading and writing. And they're saying, we've now done that work. Won't you give us an opportunity to see the benefits of it? And they've told me, your administrative skills, your managerial skills, your leadership skills, I know can help us settle this down and again create stability where there's been such chaos. The business people, it's pretty obvious. For them, they've said this is great because now not only are we going to have a good superintendent that's focused on education, but you're also the ones that have had the actual practical business experience. You've been president of the Taxpayers Association. You've led an economic development group. You've worked with the Wyoming Business Alliance. You have that conservative business approach that we can trust in, and we're delighted to have you serving on these boards. So I'm an administrator, and I'm a proven leader. And I'm passionate about education, and I really look forward to helping move education forward in this state. So again, I'm Mike Ceballos. I'm running for state superintendent. I'd love to have your vote and would value it. And you can find out more about me by going to mikeforeducation.com.
Mr. Ceballos, thank you so much again.
You're welcome.